So tell us what happened on the night. Just describe it.
Well,
What
it was
here?
actually the early hours of the morning, and we got rung by the artist who lives in one of our cabins, and she said, I can't open my doors.
Because we're on a property with shared
Yes,
housing, really.
we have several families that live on our property in various cottages and sleep outs, etc.
Which is a lovely idea, which is the way New Zealand can rebuild our community.
Yes.
We'll get to that
And
later.
we all work and look after each other.
Beautiful idea.
She rang and said, we weren't expecting flooding because we're an island here. We're close to 15 metres above sea level. So we weren't expecting flooding. We weren't warned in the news that that night that I had watched. The weather was still an orange lookout for us, so we weren't expecting the flooding. But the river had come up. Apparently there was about 700 millimetres of rain had fallen, and there was severe flooding going across Omaranui Road, which is the road bordering State Highway 50, about a kilometre away there. And then the stop bank that we used to have 30, 40 years ago, which had been taken away, it just channeled it all up here. So,
and what we have here beyond the little housing enclave is a large field, so it had flooded all across that field.
Absolutely.
And how much, give us an idea, up to your waist, how
much? When I got up in the morning after getting the call and then woke Jared, who then went straight for the young children
in the front house. And this was around 5:30?
5:30, quarter to 6, so it was still dark. And we got out, and the water was about here.
Oof. And silty water, thick.
When it's moving, it's still like river water, but the silt all comes as it slows down, and then it sits. All hell broke loose, really. After that, we could hear people jumping into vehicles, trying to escape the water. We were looking out on the road. It was rising, but we probably didn't rise as quickly as it rose in Estale or Pakawhai, but it was rising, and you knew you had to get out. And I think the big thing that struck me as I stood out on the driveway was nobody was coming to save us. We had no warning, and nobody was coming to save us. And I don't say that saying poor me, it's just that there was such widespread flooding everywhere at that time that the civil defence were completely overwhelmed. What we saw this was a time when men actually stood up and just did what men do. They're not the ones that get New Zealander of the Year. They're just men who, climb on roofs, get people off roofs, they get people onto trucks. They got muddy, they got dirty, they just did things, extraordinary things. And you'll never hear of them, but we saw them in action.
That's beautiful.
Ricky down the road, he must have saved 3 truckloads of people. And Bobo, who drove the truck, a big silent Maori guy, he just drove the truck again and again round here, picking people off roofs. Ricky would jump in the water. There was probably others helping, and getting a lot of older people who are frail, who are not very agile, into this truck, which got them to the marae. And the last time they came up, they almost didn't make it because the current was so strong that they were getting swept. A big truckload of people. Cam Ormsby, Haniwai's husband, he had his boat out getting other people.
It's moving, isn't it?
It is. You just see these
quiet
people,
heroism in real males,
and
the protective instinct,
absolutely,
the community instinct.
Yep, and Bill
doing what's right.
Taking little kids, a family of babies, and that, holding them above their heads, going through strong currents to get them to safety. I mean, what could you say? That's what people do. Our neighbour here, Graham Penny, older guy, he had tried to get through with 2 men down Links Road, and our river actually flowed backwards, so it came round here and backwards, and he was pushed in his ute off into the Links Road vineyard, so that way going south when it's running this way down here. And he didn't tell me. I had to ask him several times when I met him, a bit more about his story. Eventually I realised there was another person in the back, an older man, and I said, well, how did he get out? And he said, oh, I got him out first.
Oh,
So, you know.
he would have drowned. He would have died.
Yeah, and they got out upside down in a washing machine of water through windows. And he got the older guy in the back seat out through the window before he got himself out. So that's when I'm saying these are just what men do. If they want to know what a man is, come around and meet some of the people around here.
You know who you are, and we both and many other Kiwis salute you and thank you. This is what real Kiwis still have inside us. It has not been broken by all the corruption, all of the ghastliness of this government and governments before, all of the ghastliness of overseas people who would take this country over. Cannot break this New Zealand spirit.
Absolutely.
It cannot be broken.
No.
It's too much in our DNA, and it's too brave.
And the helicopter pilots, we heard them all day. They just went all day taking people off roofs at Oahu. The flooding at Oahu was extraordinary, with power of the Ngāroa River, which is bigger than our Tutaikuri River. And they just went all day taking people off the tops of roofs in extraordinary situations and having to balance in the rain and the wind to get people up into helicopters that weren't designed, you know, for transporting people. A lady I spoke to down Maranui Road, she had clambered out her window onto her woodshed.
You're still sinking, so
she had she had a big dog and she had a small dog. She was in wet pajamas, and she said the helicopter was just a cropping helicopter. The guy was pilot, and another man, they just helped her up with her dog. She held on because there was no windows, and whooshed her up to the top of this hill in Puketap, where they were taking numerous others and, you know, just doing extraordinary things. And nobody will ever hear of these people. They will never get a medal and be known as New Zealander of the Year, but they're the men I think we should be looking up to.
That's so beautifully put. Take us back into your own personal story, or at least stories from this area of housing. The mother at the front. What happened? She was woken by her children, wasn't she?
Yes.
Her young children.
Her children woke her. They were in the bed with her, and she was woken and realised the water was lapping the bed. And she didn't know what to do.
And those children were panicked, weren't they?
They were 2 and 6 years old.
Oh,
the 6-year-old was panicked.
Yeah.
The mum was panicked, as you would be, and there was nowhere to put the children. She would have had to wade out to find a tree to get them up in the tree. I believe some people put their children in trees.
So the whole house was full of water again, up to...
It was slowly rising.
In the windows, it was up to...
Yeah, it got to chest height round here.
Yeah,
it got to chest height round here.
So then take us to the story of your own personal hero, your husband. What did he do?
Oh, yes, Jared, he got the car, which we didn't think the electric car would go in that level of water, but he got it there. He grabbed the screaming children, just threw them in the back, got their mum and the artist, Ellie, and the car was packed with the kids and that. So he met me out there. The car was full, and I just told him to go because I knew he only had a short window of time to get through down State Highway 50 into Maranui Road and up to Ormley Lodge, where he woke the lady of the house, and she had no idea. I mean, unless you were in the flood, you'd have had no idea what was happening, and just said, look after these people, I'm coming back with more. But we came back, and I was checking on the people in the cottage to get out. They were also on the phone to 111, and they were telling them to stay in the house.
No.
So, stay in the house if the water's higher outside than it is in the house. So they had decided to stay. We had another lady living in some cabins over there, and she thought she wouldn't leave, but in the end my husband got her on the truck, but he couldn't get back. I had gone that way, I then went that way. Couldn't really see each other because it was...
Did you have phone connection? Could
No,
you call? No, nothing.
I couldn't call him, he couldn't call me. We both had our phones, but nothing worked.
Yeah.
So he went that way and got up into the arts village with 50 other residents from around here. There's a mezzanine floor, and I was down at the marae.
He must have been beside himself wondering where you were.
Well, yeah, and I knew that if anything happened to him, he could swim well. He was a surf lifesaver, so I knew he could swim. I can swim, and your swimming skills probably were going to save you if you were in this water.
You praise the men, but I just want to stop for a moment and think of your own selfless courage of an incredible mother, an earth mother, to say, take the children, take these other vulnerable mothers, and I will stay behind and forfeit my place. A selfish person would have said, I'm in that car, out of here. You didn't do that, Caroline.
No, I didn't.
And in that way, that's another act on all these other acts of heroism. I really applaud you and your courage. That is such terrible advice from the 111 line. I mean, people who took that and stayed in houses where the water levels rose ended up what? Trying to clamber up into the roof as the water levels rose.
By the time they got to leave, the current was so strong to get down that way. There is a high spot down there that you could have stood on and got to the marae, but the current was coming too strong, so the gentleman in the house truck and his 17-year-old son, they had got their younger sister to safety, and this 17-year-old boy, he's just left school, he turned around with his dad and went back through the raging water to get not only the lady in the cottage, but her dog. Her dog had to go first because the dog kept floating away. It was a big dog, and the dogs had no chance in the current. And they got the dog. He gave a life jacket to Bevan, who's and his son, and they went and put it first round the dog to get the dog to safety, and then they went back through the water.
What's the name of the son?
His name's Harry.
Harry, what a hero.
Harry Wheeler.
You will be a future leader of this country.
Yeah.
Those moments define not just the disaster, but define character, define a lifetime. That's a moment of just great heroism.
Just young kids, straight out of school. And I mean, we had those all over Pakawhai, the surf lifesavers. Instead of working at the beach, they were all called in, and they were all over Pakawhai rescuing people, ducking down under power lines in their little IRBs, or some had surf skiffs. The Glenacoss brothers up the top of Puketap Hill, they went down into Puketap, which was just a disaster area similar to S Valley. That's the same river, Tutaikuri, and I think one of them had a surf skiff, and they were out there getting people who were trapped, and one of the women that I think they saved, her son told me she was already partially drowned.
And they saved her?
Yes, he saved her with a little surf skiff. He was a lifesaver. I presume it was him. They think it was him, but we haven't connected or...
You're like a treasure trove of these community stories.
Yeah.
And I, unlike you, think our responsibility as good journalists, even on this alternative side of media that's telling the truth, in the future we need to gather these people in halls and tell these stories and honour them and put them into the archives, the historical archives, because these people are truly heroes.
They are. I mean, these boys could have stayed on their social media. They were seeing it unfolding on social media. That's where people were seeing it, because we weren't hearing it, and we weren't getting any emergency alerts or anything. And so that's why they went straight down with whatever they had into the Puketap Valley.
Can I stop you there and say, what do you think of a government and an organisation from the government down that is not giving emergency alerts and not doing its job? What do you put that down to? Because I'm hearing lots of opinions.
We did get an emergency alert. We got it when we'd been sitting at the marae watching the water rise for another 3 or 4 hours. So this happened at 5:30, and
what, you got an alert about 11?
We got an alert about 11.
That's
11 o'clock.
pathetic.
It's actually like a slap in the face what even just kills me more
token.
is the fact that we were flooding and we were being rescued and rescuing each other, and Pakawhai was sitting there and the water was going towards them, and the Ngā Raw water was heading that way as well, spilt its banks, and nobody was telling them. They didn't get the water till 9, 10 o'clock.
Oh, the government didn't get those alerts to them.
No messages went to them to get out.
This is really dark. Some of the stories I'm hearing in this area are so dark. It's a government. Is it ineptitude? But it's beyond incompetence. It feels like it's beyond incompetence. It's like a really neglecting parent looking away while a family member is being beaten up. It's got that metaphorical aspect to it. Then we'll need, what I say with that is it will need a lot of investigation in the future.
Well, I think they will look into
something
it.
Very
they must
dark.
Look into it, because how could, these areas be flooding, and we're all upstream of where the water's going, and those people get no alerts or no warning to get out. So people there had to leave animals. There was children on roofs in wet pajamas, and people just running for their lives. It's such a horrible experience to see all this water coming towards you like a tsunami.
Many times I've sent messages through people I've interviewed to Jacinda Ardern, but Chris Hipkins, this is my message to you. This is on your head. You had just taken over as Prime Minister. At the very least, you are utterly inept. At the very worst, there is some criminality here, and we will find out. Kiwis will talk. Kiwis will share stories. It doesn't matter how much you censor and deride us, we will share these stories. And it will come back to haunt you, Chris Hipkins. You need to come to this area and put it right with these people, and above all, get the payments. Caroline, what about the payments? Have you had any money to help you? You've done an extraordinary job cleaning up, because what was the silt level? What was the...
Well, the silt would be about half the level of the water, and we were about 1.2 to 1.5 metres of water, probably at the height, 1.5 metres of water. So
you had silt up to about here?
The silt could be up to 0.7, but it depends. If it got stuck like by a fence, if the water was flowing that way, you might have 1.5 metres of silt, or you might have 0.2 of a metre of silt.
When you walked back in after you'd been up there and all of this trauma, all of this night, and you saw your land,
you've just got to put it to one side because it's sort of overwhelming.
Yeah.
So my way of getting through it is actually just focusing on the next thing. What can I do now?
Brilliant. One step each day.
I don't take the whole thing in. I knew it was devastating, and but I just thought, okay, if we can get to the house, if we can have a way of getting to the house, and once you get into the house, that's great. Then was actually being able to move safely around the house when the mud was up to your knees.
And when you say get into the house, we're talking a house full of silt.
House full of wet silt. Yeah.
Wet silt.
Yeah.
And we have your son's car, that story.
Well, our son's in his mid-30s, and he's always liked his cars.
Yeah.
He's had several on the property, but he comes down and works on it, and
it's just a joy for some people.
It is. And he goes to the local car club and does a little bit of racing, but this car's been in. People have asked to use it in videos for different things that boys or men do.
And then he contacts you and says, can you just
open
the door? And what was your reply?
Well, I said, Mark, if we could open the doors, we would, but we can't get probably within about 6 metres of it. You'd have to dig. And then to get the driveway that people could actually get four-wheel drives on it. The cars, there was about 12, 13 cars on the property, and all of them had about half a tonne of silt in them.
The cars are all full of silt, everywhere.
It depended where they got pushed to. We've got my husband's little red one that someone's working on. The car wreckers came to take it. They couldn't move it.
They couldn't move it.
He couldn't move it. So they've got to come back with something a lot bigger and stronger.
We have this truck clearing rubbish from the side of the road, but in those early days, was there any government, and I think I know the answer to this because I'm getting the same answer all around this area, was there any government help, any army help, anything of substance from our top echelon in this country saying, hey, we're here to help clean up anything?
Yep. Well, certainly there was army help. So we were on the marae. There was 150 of us refugees from around this area on the marae that night. And I must mention Rihanna down the lane. There was no food. We don't have a whare kai there. She had a shed with a primus and a big pot, and people went and found bits and bobs in there, when they could wade through the silt, and found a few little, packets of this or that, and she cooked up a meal for 150 people that night.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it was like the loaves and fishes. We got a little bit of bread and we got a little hot bowl of soup. It was just delicious, because for most of us it was the first thing we'd eaten that day. And she did that out of nothing.
Extraordinary woman.
Yep, that's Kiriana down the lane. So that was the marae, and they really welcomed us. They made sure we had blankets. So the local Waiheke marae, the people have been amazing. They just come together and make sure everybody's got what they need.
Is that on elevated land, so it wasn't flooding?
It's only slightly more higher than this, but we were about to be evacuated from there too, because if the river had kept rising, but the bridge broke because there was all slash and the trees.
All the logs.
Yeah, and that pushed a lot of the water further off, so we started to drop after that.
And you were saying the army did
But the
come
army
in.
came the next day. They couldn't get in the first day because there was too much flooding, but they came in the second day in their Unimogs, and they evacuated a lot of us over to Hastings.
Where did you find somewhere to live there?
Oh, well, my family, by the second day, I had managed to contact family. And my brother and sister-in-law were waiting for us over there, so we went and stayed with them.
But my question about the army is, we've got these big, strong, young guys who are meant to be very fit and healthy, who are needed here to dig out. Did you get army help to dig out your property? Any army help?
No, we got
Nothing.
We got Samoan RSC workers came and were wonderful. We got Voices for Freedom, people turned up, strangers turned up, family and friends, obviously. We had the Man Up crew.
The Man Up crew were amazing, weren't they? This is Brian Tamaki's church group.
They were all along here, and it was in the rain too, so the silt, and there was one gentleman who stood out there and he directed, and he always had a big smile.
I've heard incredible things about Man Up.
Lovely.
And then another favourite, Zeb Jackson's crew.
We had Zeb Jackson's crew, and they were working in Pakawhai, but they came on about the third or fourth week. They came. Tania in the cottage had organised them, and they were amazing.
Would they just turn up and dig and...
Well, they come the day before and they do a scout round. What do we do? And they've got about 20 people. They bring in diggers and trucks, and they took down all our Fijoa orchard, which had a huge amount of silt stuck in it, and our chicken area, and they also cleaned up around Tania's place, and just were generally fantastic.
Did the chooks survive?
Some of them did, because we free-range chooks, so they could jump in some of the trees, but some of the trees got pushed over, and so they were trapped underneath. So I've got about 16 chooks.
Yeah.
But we had 24 sheep, and they were like, the sheep had no chance. They just kept getting trapped by whichever fence was next. But they survived the first fence, they got the second or the third. And when we got evacuated in the Unimogs and we were going along the expressway, the sheep were just plastered along all the fences. Sheep and some cattle, but yeah, they didn't really stand a chance.
Did you see any human bodies? Did you see human bodies?
No, but we did have
mixed reports about this.
None of us can believe that there were so few people who didn't survive. So the USARS team came in the first few days, and they checked the house, and they checked everybody and anybody who made 111 calls, and they sort of do a scout round of your property. But we did, knowing what was happening, and speaking to people down in Maranui Road, I know there was a whole lot of RSC workers who had to swim from the house they were in, because it was completely flooded, to somewhere else.
They're the seasonal workers who come to work on the fruit and be picked.
They come
often from the islands?
Often from the islands, yes.
That's what we're hearing, that perhaps those people, their passports, that wasn't all completely recorded around here, were they some of the bodies that are rumoured to have gone there. But again, that has to be part of a future investigation, because there are so many reports of bodies that were being seen on beaches and even out at sea, and there are reports of helicopters at night with body bags, but I can't confirm this unless people are actually, this remains hearsay, unless the people who actually have done the work, the helicopter pilots, will contact and whistleblow, because this is for your country as well. We need to know the truth. We need to know what else went on that's being hidden by the government. We know they're hiding something, but we don't know what it is. There were odd things done on the wharf, large containers, refrigerated containers.
We did hear that.
Yeah. So we don't know what all of that stands for, and we're depending now on whistleblowers to tell the truth anonymously if you want to. But tell us also about some of the other mysteries, the sounds of explosions. What did you hear about that?
Oh, well, we have a gentleman, Bevan, who lives down in a house truck, and the house truck reverberates with loud noises, much more than, say, a normal brick house or whatever. And he had been saying to me in the previous weeks that he said, do you hear the loud bangs? Often in the evening, and they're coming from over that way, and then you see these big sort of strange looking clouds coming from over that way.
Over that way is where? Up towards the river?
Yes, I think there's one coming up there now. But he hears the banging, a huge explosion. And
this was in the weeks leading up to the...
Yeah, and he still hears them. He still hears them. I don't hear them. But he hears them down there. We don't hear them if we were in our brick house.
What we heard yesterday from a couple of people was there were 15-minute explosions on the night of the storm. They were just going off every 15 minutes. Again, we don't know what they are. Can anybody help with this? We can't do all the work. We need all of us Kiwis who want the truth to do this together. We are a community, and it doesn't matter what our leaders do or don't do. We can find the truth if we put our heads together. Okay, we'll leave that there, but let's talk about the positive. You've taken the silt and you've actually pushed it down.
Well, I always like to look on the positive side, so I thought, oh, this is black gold.
It is. It's not toxic.
It's not toxic.
Very rich in goodness. You can grow in this.
Well, that's what I thought. I mean,
it's river silt.
It's river silt. We know how lush the East Valley is usually.
Yes.
So that's why I thought, no, I won't be like the others and put it on the roadside for the council to take away. We'll push it to the and spread it over the back of our property.
Brilliant.
So
how did you clean all the bits out, the plastic, the bits of things that are
just family, friends, different groups? They came and they picked through, trying to save my trees initially, but then they'd pick up all the rubbish that had come up through.
So it's real people power, just going through the soil.
Absolutely. I mean, we had huge logs that came up from the river, that powered into our house and broke through our sliding door, and some of them were here and there. We had diggers pulling them away, and then you'd find somebody's bowls from their kitchen, and I had bananas hanging in trees that had come from the cottage over there, and we had all sorts of debris. In fact, I had a lot of my lingerie actually went straight out my window, because we sleep with our windows open around here.
No.
And my lovely son-in-law from Australia came over to help with, and he can drive diggers, and that he was out the front, and he was saying, come on, Mum, what's this?
Bra trees.
Yes.
At least there's a humour there. But would you like to say down the camera, perhaps before we finish, a thank you to those who dug through the silt and mess?
Absolutely no way to repay all the people that came from one end of the country, and I'll just mention Tim Reed and Jacinda, who doesn't like to have the name Jacinda, but that's her name, and she was so lovely.
I'm glad there's a good Jacinda out there.
And they were all getting together for a celebration of the 1 year anniversary of the protest, but instead decided to turn up in our local area, and we were fortunate enough to have them on our property. And they stayed for a week and just did so much. And they just picked up rubbish, they cleaned the house of silt. So we had, family, we had friends, we had strangers from Hawke's Bay, and then we had the big groups, the freedom groups, the Man Up, the RSC workers, the Task Force Kiwi, Yeah, I'm sure I've missed some out, but there were so many people that just turned up to help.
It is a contrast. It's a jarring contrast. I want your message to the looters, the ones who came to take. What would you say to them? Because that rests that evil they did with them on their consciences for the rest of their lives.
Well, you know, we were fortunate around here that there wasn't a lot left to take, but we heard that there was looters elsewhere, particularly Esk Valley, Puketap, and still are ongoing. And what would I say I don't know if I've got anything to say to people that would do things like that.
When Kiwis are so desperate,
Yeah,
it looks like someone
yeah.
tried to hotwire the car we talked about earlier. But if you can take when others have been so taken from and are so desperate, that rests very heavily on your conscience. That's what I would say, and it will haunt you. And it will haunt you into the next iteration of this life, I believe. Very, very dark. So we have the light, the beautiful helpers, and we have the dark.
Absolutely.
We have the ones.
And there was so much more of those. So much more people. They were just so kind. Even like always, we've the hire centre. They've just been so kind. Even there, you know, straight away today it's raining. He won't charge us for the use of the other digger that my husband has because he knows it's wet. He said he knows, you know, and he's just given me half an hour tutoring in how to stop the pooling of, you know, we've got silt, we've got compaction from all the heavy machinery, and he just explained on the phone what were the best, you know, thing to do for my husband and I to get the soil around here back to how it was.
Can we say his name?
Evan. I just know him as Evan from always, and he's just been brilliant.
Well, let's end this delightful, rich, sad, poignant, heartening conversation. It's had all of it, Caroline.
Yes.
With that little bit of heroism, that generosity from Evan. Thank
Yes.
you, and thank you. What a wonderful woman. You're inspiring.
Oh, thank you. But certainly there's far more around here that you know, that stepped up on that morning.
What a spirit you have. Thank you, Caroline.
It's actually been quite wonderful to see after the devastation of the last 3 years and the splintering and the othering, and then to see people, nobody cares whether you're vaccinated or not, they're just in here helping you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Let's end with a shot on those shoes.
And these were given to me by a girlfriend. Most of my clothing has been given to me.